Hi there and welcome to this edition of Jamaica Magazine. Coming up on today's show, some tips on how you may use up that small area in your backyard for planting food. And if you're looking to do that on a broader scale, then you may want to know what's in store for novice farmers. All that and more. But first, the news.
Good day, I'm Stephen McHugh, and this is your JIS News for Tuesday, June 6, 2023. The Ministry of Local Government and Community Development will provide $10 million to the Portland Municipal Corporation to clean up the Musgrave Market, which was destroyed by fire recently. The funds will also be used to provide a temporary market for butchers in the parish, subject to approval of the location by the Public Health Department. Portfolio Minister Desmond McKenzie made the disclosure during the National Disaster Risk Management Council meeting on Friday.
I want to assure the vendors in Port Antonio of the government's commitment to ensure that we restore as best as possible the market. We are working with a private sector company through the kind assistance of Minister Vaz to come up with a concept for the market that will allow much more space and allow vending to be done in an orderly fashion.
Approximately 170 vendors have been negatively impacted by the fire, which destroyed a significant portion of the market. Minister McKenzie says the Musgrave Market was insured and a partial report has been received from the Jamaica Fire Brigade. Meanwhile, investigations indicate that a fire at the Linston Market on June 1 was the work of arsonists. The minister says government will not bow to pressure from any source and is urging those involved in setting fire to markets to stop. He reveals that over the last year and a half, 17 fires have occurred in markets across the country. This has cost the ministry more than $100 million in relief support and restoration, among other things.
90% of those who sell in the markets are females. And when we deliberately set fire to our public institutions, then it is cause for concern.
There are approximately 35 markets across the country. The Office of Disaster Preparedness and Emergency Management, ODPEM, says several disaster mitigation measures are being implemented by key ministries, departments, and agencies of government. Acting Director General Richard Thompson gave an update on the country's state of readiness during last week's meeting of the National Disaster Risk Management Council. Among the outputs are the development of 4 hazard frameworks and the implementation of 3 hazard programs. ODPEM also supported a campaign dubbed Out a Road, targeting schools for the promotion of disaster risk management education. To advance disaster risk research, Mr. Thompson says a flood case study for Montego Bay was developed using forensic investigation methodology. This was in partnership with the United Nations Office for Disaster Risk Reduction, UNDRR.
The ODPEM continues to take the necessary steps and action to increase the country's resilience to disasters by building sound preparedness, mitigation, response, recovery, and rehabilitation measures.
ODPEM's Director General adds that the government is implementing a project to improve the country's overall emergency communication system. This is dubbed DCOM, short for Disaster Emergency Communication, and is being done in partnership with the Japan International Cooperation Agency.
The ODPEM has advanced the implementation of this project. Thus far, we have seen the completion of 2 maintenance centers that would be significant to the overall network, one in Kingston and one in St. James. Overall, the network will have a total of 24 repeater sites and 5 siren sites, and we have thus completed the renovation and construction of 5 repeater hot sites.
To ensure Jamaica is fully prepared for the 2023 Atlantic hurricane season, assessments and system checks have been conducted on the current National Emergency Communication Network, emergency phones from telecom providers, and satellite communication. Upskilling of the labor force and expansion of the business process outsourcing BPO sector are 2 areas receiving priority attention as the government seeks to increase Jamaica's per capita income and GDP. Minister of Industry, Investment and Commerce, Senator Aubin Hill, says BPOs remain a vital asset for the labor force. This sector is estimated to contribute approximately 136 billion Jamaican dollars per year, which represents roughly 6% of Jamaica's GDP.
This is where Jamaica has to go. And that's why upskilling and the BPO is such a wonderful part of the business.
Senator Hill was speaking at the recent official opening of 76 RHR Business Center on Red Hills Road, which houses one of the newest BPO facilities. He congratulated the local investors, through which the BPO will provide 1,800 Jamaicans with direct employment.
We need more investments like these from Jamaican families. From Jamaican families. I'm going to talk about that a little bit more. Entrepreneurs and companies that are able to do so. Investments in Jamaica must be done first by Jamaicans and cannot be expected to come only from foreign investors.
The Ministry of Industry, Investment and Commerce is partnering with the Inter-American Development Bank, IDB, on a series of MSME business roadshows across the country. This is one of the ministry's latest initiatives to inform, educate, and facilitate business for the micro, small, and medium enterprise MSME sector.
We're doing so in parallel with capacity building workshops being staged by the Jamaica Business Development Corporation. Here's Valerie Vieira. Mrs. Vieira is right here with us, one of the key agents of the Ministry and the Ministry of Finance to increase the participation of MSME in public procurement and sensitizing them about the opportunities obtained in the set-asides regimes.
Speaking at the launch recently, Senator Hill thanked the IDB for its partnership, which provides a grant of $250,000. The roadshow will kick off in Kingston, Mandeville, Montego Bay, and Ocho Rios.
It will have several services in one location that's available for companies that are at different stages in their business life cycle. 2, it will bring much needed services to different key areas in Jamaica so entrepreneurs in the north, west, east, and south will benefit. Inclusion. 3, the project aims to increase several pain points that MSMEs are facing, including managing intellectual property, meeting and maintaining standards, internationalization, and export and access to financing, and several others.
And finally, 20,493 new electors have been added to the National Voters List. The updated voters list, which was published on May 31, now has a total of 2,017,921 registered voters. The newly registered voters are now eligible to cast their ballots in future elections or referenda. Once voter ID cards are ready for the electors added to the May 31 list, they will be able to collect them at the Electoral Office of Jamaica, EOJ office in the constituency where they are registered. The voters list is published twice per year, May 31 and November 30. The deadline to register for the next voters list is September 30, 2023. And that's it for JIS News Today. I'm Stephen McHugh. Thanks for watching.
The latest now on all that happened in the office of the Prime Minister this past week.
There is no attempt by the government to remove cash, meaning paper money, from the system. We need to take planning for natural disasters far more seriously.
These and more coming out of the office of the Prime Minister. I'm Andre Palmer, and you're watching Jamaica House Weekly. Prime Minister Andrew Holness has assured Jamaicans that there is no attempt by the government to remove cash from the system to create a cashless mandate for citizens. The Prime Minister made the statement at a digital transformation forum of the Inter-American Development Bank IDB recently. Acknowledging that there are concerns about digital currencies, Mr. Holness asserts that investments continue to be made both in the technology and the currencies themselves. He assures that citizens will be able to choose whether they participate in the ongoing digital transformation.
There is no attempt by the government to remove cash, meaning paper money, from the system. I want to take the opportunity to assure everyone that, one, neither the digital ID nor digital currency will be mandatory. There will be no compulsion to use them. The reason we are implementing these things is to make the lives of citizens easier. If you choose to use them, hooray to you. If you choose not to use them, it is your choice.
As it regards safety concerns, Prime Minister Holness points out that some of the threats that exist in digital currencies also exist in cash. He says focus, therefore, must be placed on the strength of the country's laws to protect consumers and not in fear of the technology. This, he says, is especially true for the NIDS program and the central bank's digital currency Jamdex, which was launched in 2022.
There will be strong safeguards to ensure that your personal data and information is properly secured and used for the purposes that the citizen has provided it for.
Prime Minister Holness is appealing to Jamaicans to take the necessary precautions to protect life and property during the 2023 Atlantic hurricane season. The season runs from June 1 to November 30. The Prime Minister delivered his appeal at the National Disaster Risk Management Council meeting on Thursday. He said the time had come for a no-nonsense response to the threat of natural disasters and reminded persons to listen for and adhere to warnings issued by credible, relevant authorities.
We need to take planning for natural disasters far more seriously, because the impact to us is existential, meaning a natural disaster could potentially wipe out the country.
According to Mr. Holness, the government has put policies in place that provide access to crucial funding in the event of a natural disaster. One of these is the National Natural Disaster Risk Financing Policy.
Jamaica became the first country in the Caribbean, and certainly the first small island developing state, to issue or sponsor a catastrophe bond. The bond is effective up to, it is for 3 Atlantic tropical cyclone cycles, so that would end in December 2023. And in the event of an event that qualifies for payout, Jamaica would be protected up to US $185 million in rapid response.
On his inaugural visit to Jamaica, CEO of Korea East West Power and the Jamaica Public Service Company JCF, Young Moon Kim, paid a courtesy call on Prime Minister Andrew Holness last Thursday. They discussed challenges facing Jamaica's energy sector and alternatives such as energy storage systems ESS and hydrogen for power generation. The Prime Minister pointed out that the cost of fuel had risen significantly since Russia's invasion of Ukraine. While ripple effects of the pandemic were negatively affecting the price consumers pay for electricity, he said the government would continue to explore options for more affordable energy for all Jamaicans.
The integration of technology into education is the next frontier. There is a fear that somehow technology, with all its advancements in artificially developing intelligence, could replace or minimize the role of the teacher. That is absolutely not the case when it comes to education.
Prime Minister Andrew Holness met with Dr. Rebecca Tortello, education specialist from UNICEF, along with 6-year-old Ari and 10-year-old Nathaniel, both hearing-impaired students, during a recent courtesy call. He was presented with a copy of the Accessible Digital Textbook Project, which was created to provide special needs children with access to high-quality interactive digital textbooks to enhance learning. The Prime Minister thanked UNICEF for its continued partnership in securing the future of every Jamaican child and Book Fusion, which digitized textbooks with audio and sign language capabilities.
So I'm very happy to see that content which was embedded in books are now digitized so that they can be easily accessible to persons who may be visually or hearing impaired, to persons who may learn differently.
Closing out the weekend, the Prime Minister, through his social media accounts, congratulated athlete Sharika Jackson on her remarkable achievement at the Racers Grand Prix on Saturday. Jackson set a new meet record of 10.78 seconds in the 100-meter A finals. And this is where we close out Jamaica House Weekly. We'll be back next week with more stories coming out of the office of the Prime Minister.
Want to try out that green thumb of yours, but having an issue where space is concerned? Urban gardening, and this is where one may use small outdoor spaces in a creative and unique way to start a garden for growing foods, is a thing. So, let's find out more.
Urban gardening is the cultivation of vegetables, fruits, aromatic plants, and herbs in an enclosed space or your backyard. It's an ideal way for those with little space to participate in the process of food production, saving money while feeding themselves. Practical application is one of the best methods of imparting new knowledge. The Jamaica 4-H clubs ran with that concept when it set up an urban garden display project at 123 Duke Street in downtown Kingston.
This project was born out of the COVID pandemic, where we recognize that food production has to become everybody's business. Traditionally, most of our food in Jamaica is cultivated in rural areas. We believe that even if you are in a dormitory community without land space, we believe that there's still an opportunity for you to produce. In this urban model, you would realize that we are demonstrating how you can do air planting, how you can do planting on your fence line, how you can produce food in different medium. And so we are utilizing a fully integrated approach from collecting your own water, by generating your own nutrient within the urban garden model setting to be able to produce the food that you will eat.
There are a few vital things that plants need to grow. These include sunlight, proper temperature, moisture, air, and nutrients.
One of the basic pieces of technology inside our urban model garden is to demonstrate rainwater harvesting. From your roof, you're collecting your water, not only your roof, but just anywhere there's a runoff, because it could be a runoff underground. And what you want to do is to be able to have some storage capacity.
In the 4-H urban garden, the water is stored underground to ensure there is more available space on the surface. Of course, your environment will determine the most effective setup for your system.
One of the good things about Jamaica, other than when we have night, we always have sunlight. There are some plants that requires a lot more lighting than others. And so one of the things we demonstrate or we share with urban gardeners is where you put what. So there are some plants that you can do indoors. There are some plants that will strive and do better if they were to be grown outdoor. Whether you're using container, you're using your fencing, you're using backyard, front yard, or your rooftop. Another feature that is demonstrated here is composting. To my right is our composting area, and we have a roto-composting bin, as well as we have a regular bin. And in fact, just about all the vegetative matter and the waste from the birds and the animals across there are in fact all placed into our composters, and that is broken down to provide organic matter. Because again, you know, your soil needs that for aeration, it needs it to add humus, and that's what is going to allow your plants to grow well.
And all this can be done in your own space. Livestock is another avenue you can choose in your urban gardening. Rabbit rearing is an excellent source of protein, and it doesn't require much space. You can also use the plants in the garden to feed them. Other animals can be included, such as chicken and fish.
We do a lot of different birds here. You can do your ornamental fish, you can do your tilapia, you know. And you can also do your domestic hens. Because that's something we are also promoting, is to get back to those domestic hens for eggs and meat. There are many things you can do in terms of livestock. It's almost as diverse as you're going for crops.
To replicate this model in your urban space, speak with your Jamaica 4-H Club's parish officer. You can receive seeds and other planting material to get you started.
One of the biggest threats right now in the world is not war or COVID, is really to have a sustainable supply of food. And the view is that no longer can we only rely on the traditional food producer. I think food production has to become everybody's business. And I think the extent to which we are able to get all our people to produce some of what you will consume, I think is one of the greatest steps we can take in looking at the phenomenon of food sustainability.
A strategy the Jamaica 4-H Society has started to aid in maintaining sustainable food within communities. And if you haven't begun the process in your space yet, you can start now.
Nutritious food, succulent dishes, superior workmanship, and excellent service. Jamaica is on the go. Let's grow what we eat and eat what we grow. Let's harness the indomitable spirit of our most valued resource, our people. Let's support our local businesses. After all, buying Jamaican means building Jamaica.
Any worthwhile business endeavor has its challenges, but having the right information beforehand will take you a far way. That said, if you're looking to try your hand at farming beyond your backyard, this next feature is for you.
Farming is a way of life, especially here in Jamaica. Today, an increasing number of young people are getting involved.
Back then, persons used to look down on agriculture based on the stigma that agriculture is for a particular group of persons. But I am proud to say that that stigma has been reduced significantly. So no longer is agriculture a last option. It's a primary option where persons are now interested in pursuing even studies at the master's level in agriculture.
Getting started in agriculture can be tricky, so there are a number of things new farmers need to be aware of.
For young persons who would like to get involved in agriculture, the first thing I would say to them, they have to first assess their interest. Agriculture is a very wide industry with different sectors, and so they first need to look at, do I have an interest in crop production or animal production?
Crop production is the process of growing produce for domestic and commercial purposes, whereas animal production is the technology applied to keeping animals for profit. You know, feeding, rearing, and breeding. That's just the basics. So for the next few minutes, we'll learn more about getting started in crop production.
We at RADA, and the field staff particularly, when we are engaged about young persons getting into farming, when they approach us, one of the main things we want to emphasize is about training. a lot of persons who want to venture into agriculture, and they see it as something that they can get into without getting that technical knowledge, because it's easy to go and get the land, prepare and sow the seeds and all of that. But there's a lot of other issues you have to consider. You have to consider the pest and the disease control. As you say, you have to look at the weather condition, you have to look at the type of crop. Different crop require different environmental conditions. Two major things we also emphasize to new entrant farmers is we look at the markets. Don't just jump into production without thinking about your market. I know it's sort of tempting for a lot of persons when prices are high and it look very nice, and you can get a lot of income, but that's not always the case. Because by the time you put in that crop, the price is usually, and the crop come in, the price is usually low. So we look at the market. And another thing, we look at the cost of production. A lot of new entrant farmers, they want to get into production without looking at what it costs to produce a crop. That is very important, because that is how you can determine if you are able to make a profit based on how you estimate your costs and your market price and all of that. So we emphasize the cost of production. So those are some of the things we emphasize to new entrant farmers.
So there are different options such as agro-processing that young persons can venture. So you don't have to be looking at agriculture as going in the sun, sweating. You can still do that practice. That's the traditional practice. But there are some contemporary practices that involves technology, such as hydroponics and aquaponics. And so young persons can look at that option as well. So don't picture a farmer as this person in dirty clothes, this person riding a donkey. Some of the farmers know they are driving the biggest vehicle you can think of, and they live in the best household that you can think of. Another thing that you need to do is to partner with RADA, in particularly the agri-linkages, to help you seek possible markets before you venture into the field of agriculture. And what you can also do is to do a SWOT analysis. When I say a SWOT analysis, once you identify your interest, you're going to be now looking at your strengths, assess the strengths, you're going to assess the weaknesses and how you can overcome them. You're going to look at the opportunities that exist, and you're now going to be looking at the threats. So one of your threats could be your, I wouldn't say competitor, because in agriculture, I don't want to give the impression that we are competing. We're all in this thing together. But there are some threats such as disaster. How can you bounce back, or how can you mitigate certain effects? So a SWOT analysis is very important when you're looking at agriculture as a young person.
With all that information in mind, get started with your research. Start farming, as you can help to make Jamaica the place of choice to live, work, raise families, and do business by growing what we eat so we can eat what we grow.
I want to get rid of that stigma that is attached to agriculture. And I want persons to understand that if we don't have farmers, we won't have any people. So where there's no food, the people will perish. So look at agriculture as a business and not as a traditional, disregarded occupation. It's a very lucrative, very vibrant occupation that you should all think of.
We have come to the end of another magazine program. Should you want a recap of today's show or any other program, please visit our website at www.jis.gov.jm. Until next time, I'm Theodore Henry. Please take care.
This has been a production of the Jamaica Information Service, the voice of Jamaica.